Howdy, everyone. Welcome. This is the ComicBase live stream. At least I think I'm in the right place. Anyway, how's everyone out there? I'm your host, Pete Bickford. I am the guy who does this wacky thing where we talk about comics, ComicBase, pop culture type things, and so forth. This is our special post-Comic-Con edition, which is the I largely survived. I'll be sharing my thoughts on Comic-Con, state of the industry, things like that today, telling a couple stories and so forth. But we'll be doing all that. Before we get into it, some quick comic-based news on the whole thing, and say hi to everyone. Can I get a quick check in the chat here? Because anytime I have to change numbers in anything about the setup right before the show, I always get worried. So tell me how the sound is, if you would, folks. I'm just want to make sure everything's sounding good to everyone. But while we're doing that, and let's see here. Okay. Just want to say hi to everyone out there. Fred is newest in the stream I see out here. Fred Slota, and he said, anyone hear about the new special cover stunt, Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong? $15 each, diptych or triptych. Interesting. Gatefold covers with roar sound effects, like roar, I guess. Sound chips like those greeting cards. No, I have not heard about that. Thank you for the news on that one, and now I'm going to have to look for the darn things. I wonder if we ordered those. If so, then I guess I'll get to see them. Mike Beam from Vancouver, welcome aboard. Richard Scott, great to see everyone. I guess you're heading off to work soon. Oro, the heat wave has arrived in Minneapolis. Yeah, all this is all the corns. I'm not even getting into it. Andre, welcome. Gregor Hector, our mod is in the house. Brian McClure, 86 and thunderstorms here in Novi, Michigan. Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. Yeah, I'm waiting for the weather just to break out here. It's just going to be the same kind of well, hopefully we won't lose as many trees as we lost last time we had this kind of weather. And I got sound, but a little bit of echo from Oro. Interesting. Is anyone else getting echo on the line? If so, I can tweak things. The nod is nodding yes. Let me see what I can do about that, if anything. I'll keep this brief, everyone. Yeah, the other thing I saw is that StreamYard did some changes to their features, which is always a little scary. All right, I'm going to turn off echo cancellation and see, does that make things either much better or much worse? Someone give me a quick thumbs up or thumbs down in the chat. I'm okay. How is that, folks? All right, and so no video. All right, so are we better or worse? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Just a quick one there. I got a quieter down there, and I got a thumbs up from the mod. And now Mike says, and now it's really quiet. Check. Actually, I'm seeing, yeah. All right, so how does that sound? Okay. All right, so I'm getting some thumbs up, so now we'll take it. Okay. All right, that's interesting. All right, well, thank you, StreamYard. I guess that's always keeping the broadcasting thing interesting. Anyway, thank you, everyone, for showing up. Thank you for putting up with us as we put up with this kind of wacky type stuff out here. Jet City Comics in the house, Brian McClure in the house, Mike Beam in the house, and I think that's everyone I saw in the chat so far. Thomas B. All right, and let's talk a little bit about some comic-based news first, and then we will move on. CBTV beta testers unite. Absolutely, we're always in beta. 139th show, and yeah, we don't know what we're doing at all. Okay, so Comic-Con. Actually, before that, ComicBase. We just pushed a new build out this morning, just fixed a tiny little drawing glitch with magazine and newspapers in the detail screen. Thank you, Oro, for pointing out that one, and we got that one resolved pretty quickly. And we're going to try to keep it pretty tight until we move on to the next version. But if you do see anything that needs fixing, we will certainly try to fix it as we go. Okay, and sound levels fine. Sounds slightly more echoey than usual, but not bad. Okay, well, we're getting what we can get. All right, so back to the chat here. Okay, so on to ComicBase, Comic-Con type news. So Comic-Con San Diego, officially the International Comic-Con San Diego, was last week from Wednesday through Sunday. Felt like it was an eternity. I left out for town on Tuesday. It was the first time I at the show as a civilian, since COVID, and one of the few times I've been at a show as a civilian. Period. Normally we're exhibiting there, and it's weird being on the other side of things. On one hand, it's much less stressful because you don't have to get a booth and infinite numbers of computers and internet connections and new software and everything else. You don't have to get all that packaged and prepped in the weeks and minutes before the show. We had a year once, I remember, where whoever was packing up the van that we were taking down forgot to include the bases for our monitors, which we were on floor stands. And so we're like, okay, wait, so we have the monitors, the computers, the everything else, and what are we supposed to hold the screens in the air with our hands? This is insane. So the day before the show, I'm over at a friend's house in San Diego, having made Home Depot runs and constructing these things out of wood at the last minute and borrowing his power tools. I'm going to say was one of the low points of 27 years of doing Comic-Con that we ever had. But yeah, no, it's a lot more fun just being an attendee for the most part. The one thing I will say I miss going there as just a regular guy as opposed to an exhibitor is you don't have that time where you get to watch the whole city being built, because the San Diego Convention Center starts out when you first walk in. It's quiet. There's just almost nobody around. There's people starting to get their first, the pallet loads full of their booths and stuff to just start to show up in their spaces. And you essentially are in this giant, vast concrete hall. You erect a city over the course of a day or two before the show, and then there's a lot of excitement as people file in at night. And it's nice, those moments after they kick you all out, where you can actually talk and see things, and so forth. And it's, you get to walk in on subsequent days, like at now or before everyone else does, to kind of get your booth going. And and that's the time, like I say, you can walk freely in the hall. It's beautiful. I mean, you can, you can't actually do any business during that time unless someone's willing to bend a rule for you. But those are the times I do miss, where you actually get to chat with the other vendors and so forth. That said, way less hassle just coming in as a regular guy, where you just kind of show up and show your badge and join the throng. And it's quite an experience. I got out there a day beforehand on Tuesday, went and sightsaw on Coronado Beach, which is lovely. Cannot afford it. I cannot afford a crack house in Coronado. The Coronado Beach is the island just off of San Diego. It's a lovely community and everything, full of very fit young people going for Starbucks and stuff like that. And I think the smallest, most rundown, like Breaking Bad, Jesse house, 800 square feet, right butted up to the neighbor, goes around 1.7 million. Gas on the island was $6 a gallon. It was like, good God. But San Diego itself, not nearly as bad. So before I get going into the details of the show, I'm going to pass on my general Comic-Con tips. Number one, if you should ever find yourself wanting to go to Comic-Con, as you guys all probably know that it sells out early and get your badges much earlier and so forth. If you were trying to get a badge on the secondary market, the day before the show, a single day badge was going for as high as $480 on whatever the StubHub equivalent of that was. Officially they're non-transferable, but people do. Normally these badges are about $70 a day, $75 a day, something like that. $300 for the week, give or take. The problem is that they sell out. You have to buy them by lottery, and it's a royal pain in the butt unless you get on them the second they are available. So if you do want to go for it, you got to commit early. Otherwise, it's just never going to happen for you. The other thing about that one is, lodging, transportation, stuff like that. Make some arrangements well in advance. Comic-Con typically sells out, hotels for about a 30-mile radius. Anything that is one price, before the show. It used to be like you could get a pretty decent room for $120 down, off the bay. Just triple it for Comic-Con. So what you're really hoping for is a room in some Airbnb someplace north of the city. Any place that's walkable from the show is going to be more money than God. I knew a few people with those things, and none of them wanted to tell me their bills. They're like, I'm too embarrassed. I can't say it. But anyway, when you actually do the show itself, guys, keep in mind, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. I know you're excited to be there and everything else there, but you got to approach it like this thing is going to really take it out of you. So start slow, keep your head about you. It is, do not burn out on preview night. Otherwise, by, Saturday or Sunday, when the whole thing concludes, you're just going to be a wreck. If you get a chance, get away from the show floor. Take some time out for your sanity. I strongly advise at some point in the day, just say, look, at 4 o'clock or whenever your time is, declare either a drop dead time, where you bail out, or make a vacation away from the whole thing and get the hell out of Dodge. I mean, get 5-10 miles out and just see a beach, go to a movie, do something which isn't Comic-Con for a while, because it's overwhelming. I heard some people talking when I was in line. And by the way, the other thing we'll do in Comic-Con all the time is stand in lines. But some people were, a girl was talking to her mom, and she said, it's like, I can't really tell my friends what this is like, because there isn't another thing that's like it. It's like, yeah. I mean, you think you've seen things like this, you think I've gone to other comic shows, I've done things like that. It's so much crazier, so many more people, so much bigger, that it really becomes a different beast altogether. It is not a comic show. If you think you've been to a comic show, this is not a comic show. This is not anything. This is a full-on pop culture explosion in your face. So yeah, just take it easy at some point. Get the hell out. Next tip: sneakers. You will be walking, you'll be standing a lot. And man, they decided they were going to skimp on the carpeting this time out. Used to be they'd carpet the entire floor. For whatever reasons, they decided, no, we like concrete aisles this time out. And instead of carpeting the whole thing, it was tough. And add with that, the extra, according to my Fitbit, I was doing about 10 miles a day during the course of this whole thing. Yeah, comfortable shoes, absolute must. Keep your phone charged. If you ever, you're going to want to be taking pictures constantly of the whole thing. You always got to be looking up things on your phone just to try to get a hold of anyone, to try to look up the schedules, whatever the thing is. There's going to be a million times you're going to want to take that phone out during the course of the day, and there is absolutely no place to charge it. So carry around. This is if you want to pack one extra thing with you, it's either one of those power banks for your phone for extra battery capacity, but definitely just never ever put this thing down going to bed or whatever else unless that thing's 100%, because you will need it. And that bit me at least one point where there's pictures I could have shown you, but it's like, I've got 5% and I need to make it to the car. I can't. All right, and I think that's my basic Comic-Con tips. Let's do a quick check of the chat here. Let's do Fred Slota. Hi from Virginia. Good sound. Okay. And okay, Greg says, you may not think this is con-related, but UPS has a tentative agreement to prevent a strike. Yes, I heard about that a couple days ago, which would have been chaos for comic distributors and the mega retailers online. Honestly, if UPS went on strike, it'd be chaos for everybody. So I'm very happy that was one strike that did not happen to the show. Okay, and it got worse, quieter. Scrolling better, video good, sound better. Okay, looks like we're good. And Just See Comics points out quite wisely, they should rename Comic-Con to Pop Culture Con. That would be far more accurate, but they're never gonna do it. All right. All right, so let's start bringing up some pictures here. So Comic-Con over here. This is the first one since COVID that I went to, and I apologize for my voice here, guys. I was sucking in. I was trying to burn firewood after it had been rainy and wet and stuff like that last night, and I wound up mostly sucking down lots and lots of wood smoke all night, and that was not good for my voice. But anyway, Comic-Con, an absolute crush of people. Here's the general picture of what a view of a tiny proportion of the show floor looks like. The actual show floor is probably about 7 or 8 times the amount depicted in this picture. It's crazy how just big the show floors, and that's not to talk about the convention hall, the panel halls, the Marriott, the chaos out in the streets, or you name it. This is what the street looked like out front. So it's around 5th Street in San Diego, right outside the convention center. This is what's called the Gas Lamp District. And typically the movie companies, even though they did not, both the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild strikes happened during this whole thing, so none of the Hollywood stuff went down this time. None of the actors could show up, none of that stuff. But even then, of course, they're pitching every, pop culture product, which they really want to get everyone excited about. They're pitching that during the entire thing, and so they decorated all the buildings downtown. This is another shot of all what that all looks like. As far as you can go, you can see just these. They just convert a large part of the city into Comic-Con Central. And Comic-Con in a normal year was spilled out onto the streets down the Gaslampa district all the way across, to where Ralph's is, taking up parking lots, to special pop-up events and so forth. Did a little bit of that this year, but that was the Comic-Con that takes place outside the Comic-Con was dramatically less than it's been in years past. Now, out back of the show, don't think that there weren't things going on. This is Nickelodeon. That's the Planet Express. They're doing a relaunch of Futurama. Here's more of what that sort of booth looked like, and so forth. They had pirate ships. Yes, there's an old wooden ship out the whole thing. Voodoo Ranger, for the beer, for no apparent reason, was doing kind of like a sign up, waiting online for the whole thing. We'll either give you or sell you a beer, and you can hang out, just to kind of get away from the show a little bit. That sort of thing was going on. Down in the main street, there was a Anne Rice's vampire stuff was going on. That was one of the things out in the Gaslamp district. Paramount had a lodge where they had a bunch of attractions to promo their animated series and so forth. One that I saw that was really pretty cool, which in terms of the outside of the comic convention stuff, is as I was walking to from where I had to park my car 17 miles away. I saw some people, crew shirts that were essentially converting a bar into the Haunted Mansion. And after PressNet actually got to come in and look at the place, and it's just a couple shots of that whole thing. I'm not going to bore you guys with the whole nonsense of the whole thing, but it's really neat. There was a thing that happened a number of years ago. Let's see if I can put myself on camera here. Yeah, there we go. There was I think the best of these, they're called either activations. Some people, some industry insiders call them, or just pop-ups. That they do is they'll take some bar, essentially, or art studio or something like that, and they'll just set dress the heck out of it, and turn it into a new location. Sometimes just for a day. I think the best of these I ever saw was when the new Tron movie was coming out. They took a bar way out and they turned it into Flynn's Arcade. They brought in like a million old school 1980s arcade games. At a certain point you could realize that stuck between a couple of the old arcade games, the back was kind of a hallway, and if you happen to wander down the hallway, you saw there were all these laser effects, and you go through this weird little laser effects, like you're being shrunk down into the microverse or wherever Tronplex takes place, and suddenly you're in this futuristic bar with booming music, all sorts of like cool drink stuff happening and so forth. And then about every 5 minutes, the whole thing would go dark, and they'd run the Tron trailer on like all these hidden screens that were all around the place. Absolutely insane. And the next day, you tell people, "Oh my God, did you see Flynn's Arcade?" And you walked in, they'd actually give you one of those little rubber, coin purses that you used to make as like a craft in school, when you were a kid. They gave you a bunch of those full of Flynn's Arcade tokens, so you could play the video games. But it's like, I remember it's like, "Oh my God, guys, you got to see this thing. It's out on the street there." And the next day when, the people who, were able, to, say, "I'll get around tomorrow," disappeared. It was like it just went away in the middle of the night, like it never was there. That is absolutely epic stuff. I mean, it was just legendary marketing. The Haunted Mansion thing was cool. It was not that cool. But anyway, going back to the show itself, which, again, just for point of reference, this is kind of an idea for the whole thing. Let's talk about the show inside the show hall. All right, so like I say, this is the first one I went to since COVID. Last year, they decided, kind of at the last minute, they were like, we're going to require everyone to wear a mask, which is a rule that I heard was broken a fair amount on the show floor. But I gotta tell you guys, there is no way I'm going to a trade show, especially one I gotta fly to and spend a lot of money to and so forth. I'm not going to do business, if you're trying to talk to people like this. It's not a thing. Yeah, so you're wasting your time if you do something like that, or at least that's how I felt. So I did not go, even though I was holding on to a badge, for the show. I could have gone, but this is the first time I went down there, and I gotta say, the whole thing it was back to normal. It absolutely, the crowd levels were as big as I've ever seen. There's about 1 to 2% of the people who are still doing the mask thing, but overwhelmingly, people were just running around. It was like old times. Hall H, which is the vast, I think it's in like an 8,000 seat hall attached to the convention center. It was a non-event this year. There was one or two things in there, but honestly, nothing like what you'd see in a regular year, because all of the Hollywood guys weren't allowed to show. Part of the strike rules were that writers can't talk about their projects, they can't talk about any studio goings on they have, they can't talk about their web stuff. So yeah, that made for some awkward stories. Actors couldn't appear, they couldn't do any kind of publicity, and as much as they would want to. So a lot of things got canceled last minute. I'd heard that Captain Kirk himself was going to be like one of the few people who's like left. It's like because he had a new book out called "You Can Call Me Bill," and then at the last minute they updated the schedule in the app, which said, "Oh yeah, out of solidarity with his fellow strikers, he's not going to go do his thing." So it's like, but good news, you can still hear the producers talk about his book, and like, what's the point of that? So yeah, Hall H was a non-event this year, but the result of that is that it emptied the 8,000 or so people who already bought their tickets. They're already committed to going to Comic-Con. It emptied them out into the overall show floor, and so the show floor was packed. And even like outside of the show floor, sessions that I would have thought, I'll have no trouble getting to this one. I want to go to a show on a session in a big hall room, several hundred, seats on 3D printing. Nah, skunked. Couldn't, I didn't get there 20 minutes ahead of time, and as a result, I'm one of the, people standing outside saying, well, we're at capacity, we can't let you in. That happened to me a couple times during the show. It's, but the business end of it, because like people were doing bank. Let's see here. There were some great panels, and let me go and pull up some of that stuff. I think probably the funnest panel I went to the entire show was Chris Gore from Film Threat did a panel with, it was meant to be a filmmaker's survival guide. Basically, how do you get funding for your project? And I heard about it. When you get in there, the schedule for for all the panels is psychotic. It's a tome. It's like a telephone book of all the things going on. And it was, there's probably 40 or 50 event rooms going all the time. And of course, the way it always works is that the things you want to see are all happening simultaneously at 3 different locations, and you got to pick one. This is one that I'm really glad that I happened to be staying in an Airbnb with a buddy of Chris Gore's, who's like saying, oh yeah, by the way, he has a panel coming up, because I didn't even see him on the schedule. But this wound up being a very, very cool one. And because not only did he give a lot of really good information about how to raise funds for films and Kickstarters and things like that, but he had a panel which brought on, just out of nowhere, completely unannounced, Gary Buechler, Neurotic, Eric July, and a bunch of other cool guys, and it was just a really good show. And I had my seats in early up the whole thing, and after that it seemed like half the internet crowd was in hanging out back in the audience and the whole thing. So good stuff. One thing that was kind of weird about it, I gotta say, Eric July, you guys might know, is I think he goes by Young Rippa on like the interwebs, but he is the creator of the Rippaverse, which had the biggest Kickstarter in all of comics history for ISOM #1. It's I don't know. It's a superhero forced to pick up the cape again, and because a friend's in trouble. That sort of story. The graphic novel, I backed it way back when. It's like a $35 starter graphic novel, which I thought, it's kind of a heavy hit for a 64-page book, and it was. It was decent, but it raised $2 million plus bucks for issue #1. I mean, this thing, it's just unbelievable, the community backing for this project. Well, and then he just set another record for issue #2 is finally coming out, and another $2 million type deal. For some reason, and I don't get it, some people have decided that Young Rippa, because he's an internet commentator, he's bad mojo for somebody. And there was like a weird Twitter thing apparently happening where he was doing a signing over at the CGC booth, and someone found out that he was going to be on this film threat panel. And some people I've worked with in the past who I've really quite respected, honestly, I think did themselves no honor whatsoever. I don't even want to mention their names because I would like to think that they sobered up and are kind of professionally embarrassed. But, I said, like, I can't believe you'd let this guy, into your convention and try to get him canceled and try to pressure people into not letting him, do his, job and the whole thing. And I just gonna be like, man, I don't need to agree with everything about another human being. And I don't, my inclination when I disagree with someone is not, hey, let me go and try to get them to lose their job. And I'm like, guys, the hell, if that's what you're doing when someone disagrees with some political point of view, take a look in the mirror, man. That's not cool. So anyway, I don't want to embarrass the people further by, mentioning their names, but they know who they are. And guys, all right, so let's see here. All right, so I have Chiron. Yes, all right, we got it. Okay. But anyway, some really good panels happening on the whole thing. Everything 3D printing, sewing. There were things like you could they give you master classes in miniature painting where they provide you with the paints and the miniatures, and you could take the miniature with you when you were done. And they would do this for hundreds and hundreds of people at the same time. They had, a whole film school going on, basically the same thing. They had a whole cosplaying school, everything from concepts and layouts and fabrics and everything else to you name it. Just absolutely amazing how complete the programming was. I'm gonna say a thing that I could really do without is OMG the alphabet stuff. In terms of the panel, is someone got the bright idea and said, well, let's make sure that we color code. In addition to whether it happens at the Marriott or in this hall or that hall, let's also put little tags on everything as to whether or not this one appeals to the LGBTQIA blah 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 guys, and whether it appeals to BIPOC guys. And so there'd be like these extra stars attached to literally like every third entry in the guide, and it just made the whole thing unreadable. It was like, guys, we will have achieved complete awesomeness as a culture when no one cares anymore. And oh my god, we do not care anymore. Ironically, the same panel that I was at on Film Threat that was trying to get canceled was simultaneously being listed as a BIPOC panel. And I'm like, I don't think it had anything to do with any of that. I think it had to do with raising funds for movies. So guys, how about we just reel it back a little constructive criticism, take it for what you want. All right, so let's talk about what was going on. Just another word on crowds and the whole thing. The exhibit hall, absolutely as crowded as I've ever seen it, ever. Like, it was as crowded on a Thursday night as I've seen it on a Sunday. As on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, there was no downtime on the entire show floor. But one thing that's kind of cool is I got used to the idea that it was going to bunch up in the hall in exactly the same places it always bunches up. There'd be like right when you walk past the Marvel booth, they were doing something where they're always shouting out some kind of contest type thing. And so as a result, there's 800 people standing around blocking every bit of traffic, which just makes the hall just delightful to try to walk in. One thing that was absolutely new, Artist Alley, which is your chance to actually go hobnob with, buy sketches from, see the works of all the guys who make our favorite comic books. Those guys usually, it's strange enough at a comic show, don't get a lot of love. Oh my god, you had to fight your way to get into these little narrow things to try to chat with folks. I mean, you literally had to kind of stand back, sight in on the person you wanted to talk with, and say, okay, that's the guy, I'm going in. It's like, watch me. And it was really, so it was really neat, but man, you had to want it. Let's see here. We're talking about the ghosts. A new thing that they were trying, which is ridiculous. Sorry, I'm giving a lot of feedback to the Comic-Con folks. So if you're listening, all this is meant with love. So it's like it's a thing. In order to not block traffic on everything, people would be having giveaways and signings and stuff like that, and they didn't want the lines to extend so far out of your booth that it made it so no one could do business with you, adjoining vendors, and the line wouldn't get so big they would block all the cross traffic. Good luck with that one. So they would decide that after, I don't know, 40 or so people in any given line, that they would cap the line. And so they'd put a little sign up on a guy. They said, well, the line's capped for now. So I was trying to get into the ghost booth. Let me see if I can find a picture of that one. This was pretty cool. Did I not? No. How did I take this one off? Anyway, ABC had a ghost decide your destiny type thing, and apparently I left it off of my reel here. I apologize for that, guys. Just as a on the show floor attraction, and what they would do is it's about 30, 40 people they would be allowed to stand in line at any given moment, and then they would say, give a sign to some poor schmuck in the back and say, okay, you got to hold the sign up. This is line capped. Well, let's say you're the 41st person who thought that you were going to come in for this booth. What do you do when you're seeing a guy that says line capped? Well, you of course ask him, so line capped, is that like it's going to open up again, or what's, is that the end? It's like you can't do it anymore. And he's going to say, I don't know, they said come back in half an hour, maybe it'd like be open again. So what happens is every single person on the planet then gathers in a loose throng, not in line, but for all practical purposes, standing around like you're trying to score drugs off the local liquor or score beer as an underage kid outside the local liquor store. It's like, I'm not really hanging out here. I just like hanging with my friends out front when someone comes and buys beer for us. They were doing that kind of thing. Around the guy who was holding the poor line cap sign, and then the second that some guy would come out and say, "Hey, it's all right. You can hand me the sign because we're going to open up again." As soon as they saw that sign go down even like 6 inches, 20 people would materialize behind the guy who used to be holding the sign because they've been waiting in line all the time. If you're going to do something like that, just admit it's a line. The line goes on until the firm maximum number of people you're going to have, and then at that point say, yeah, no more people with line closed. The line cap thing, it was a sad joke. We saw it everywhere. Don't do it, people. All right, let's talk a little bit about cosplay here, because I want to move on to the next picture because it was cool. Every time that I would, tell people, hey, I'm going to Comic-Con, they would always say, oh, well, what are you going to dress as? And I'm going to say, I'm going to dress in a polo shirt because I sell comic software. And everyone thought I'm going to dress up as stuff. So the cosplay aspect of Comic-Con is legendary, deservedly so. We had our, this year I thought it was not quite at the same level of game as it's been in years past. But there was still some good stuff going on. We had our striking henchmen over here. We had people doing the traditional fantasy costumes. By the way, if you're gonna try to pull off a Red Sonja costume, kids, it's not an easy costume to pull off. Props to the people who can do it. So good for that. The pets got into it very nicely this time out. I've never seen this before. This was outside. We have Dogster Doom and Dogster Strange. They were adorbs, and they did them as Funko Pops. It was just too cute. They had a dog. I don't know how they got this dog onto the show floor. They had trained him to hold a lightsaber. And so, yeah, he thinks it's just a big stick. And so he's walking around the hall. And this dog stopped traffic. I was waiting in line for Lacuna Coil to sign a copy of they were giving away books if you went to the Ghosts booth at ABC and you went through their attraction. Afterwards, they were giving out, they were having the band Lacuna Coil sign the copies. And Lacuna Coil saw this, and all of them stopped doing what they were doing, and everyone was, they were all taking pictures of this guy. Super, super adorbs. But the person who I'm going to say won the costumes, period, in the entire show, this person right here, you guys saw everything everywhere all at once. Deidre Bobidra, herself, walking around with a desk. I mean, this desk was on wheels, and it was the IRS examiner from Everything Everywhere all at once. I'm sorry, I saw some great costumes, but nobody beat this person. You won Comic-Con. This, by the way, this is the Alex Ross booth with me doing my Doctor Who hands of doom in front of the whole thing. It was a good time on the show floor. Let's talk about some other stuff that maybe was cool, maybe wasn't. Let's go back full screen on this one because I want to talk about stuff. Let me see here. So let's talk about the comic bookness of this whole thing. So dealers, I'm going to say, were only about 10% of the floor space. Really, really big publisher presences, except for DC. DC kind of took a pass on this one. They were there, but I had to walk past their booth 3 times before I saw it. It used to be that Marvel and DC were like the big, big, big booths. This time out, the big, big, big booths, strange enough, was IDW. IDW had a huge booth. Which is strange because they were acting like they were kings of the industry, and maybe there's something we don't know, but their stock price would seem to disagree. Dark Horse had a big booth, a little bit of stuff going on, I'd say Marvel was back being Marvel. In previous years, Marvel had devoted a lot of their time to like Marvel Studios and promoting their animation projects and things like that. But Marvel was actually more of a unified presence than they've been in years past, so that was kind of neat to see. I'd say the people who got squashed in the hall were the small press and indie publishers. So small press it's different than. It's the only like kind of cheap tables, and by cheap it still costs several $100. But it was like if you were like a legit small guy, like I have a little comic book that I put out 500 copies of, something like that. You could apply for a limited number of small press tables and flog your stuff. And those guys, I hate to say it, but they got no discernible love that I saw. I'm sure they got something out of all the millions of people that came past them, but I feel kind of bad for them because they were like on one of these paths where, like, if you're trying to get to the pizza or you're trying to get to the bathroom or you're trying to get to where else, you went up just jamming up what little aisle space they had. And so I didn't see a lot of action happening at their booths, and so felt a little bad for them. Same thing goes on the opposite side of the hall for the smaller publishers, not the vast guys, but the guys who could afford like a 10 or maybe 20-foot booth. You're kind of by the entrances. It's kind of neat because you're the first thing that people see a lot of times when you walk in, but you immediately then charge right past them to go for the big attractions. And it seemed like they were getting a little lost in the shuffle because it was just such a chaotic show. In a show that's like Charlotte, where the pace is just so much smaller, so much slower. People like that got a lot more breathing space. I think they're probably able to do a little bit more business, but that was certainly my impression. In terms of the comic stuff that was out there, high dollar art in comics were the kings. It is tremendously crazy expensive to exhibit at Comic-Con. We used to blow, for our little company, we had a 20-foot booth, and we blew, basically the all-in for us was between 10 and 15 grand every year to do the show. So if you need to make that worth, your profit starts $1 north of 15 grand in terms of turning things around, if that's your cost basis. I wasn't able to find any official word on what the booths were this year. It seemed like they're hiding that information. I didn't get an immediate response to my inquiries with the Comic-Con guys, but I think it's safe to say that if you had a couple of of booths that essentially form a corner island, which if you have 2 of them in a row and they're not just in the middle of somebody else's long line, the island thing, it has an upcharge to it. I think usually it's about $500 per booth. I'm going to say that just the booth raw cost alone is probably 7-8 grand, and then you add another grand on for internet. You add, if you want carpeting on your booth, that's another $500-800. Just absolutely crazy how expensive it is, and then you start adding in hotels and food and travel and everything, and it's a super expensive show. So the people who were going to go and turn up for these things, you had to make some money. So you had to sell things generally that cost either a lot of money or it had to be something that you were going to shift a metric buttload full of. And I'm going to say the form of those is definitely where most of it went. High dollar comics, so if you're selling a $27,000 copy of Captain America comics, or a $6,000 page of Joe Simonson art or something like that, that no problem. You sell a couple of pages, you made your booth vig back, and you're good to go. And that's actually a pretty good way to sell those kind of books because they're a little nervous to buy except through auction houses. So that was a good mix for this one. So you did see a lot of that kind of material at the show. Only saw a couple of these smaller, like, $2 comic books times infinity boxes that you just keep on reloading as they sell out. There were some big, boosts like that, but very, very few. I mean, they're the same ones you're used to seeing on times before. What you saw instead, for the most part, in the comic section were lots and lots and lots of omnibuses. So big, books that are going to sell for between $50 and $100. And you're gonna again try to move a ton of them, because they do weigh a ton. Because God knows I went and I bought some on day number 1 and had to lug them around the entire show. That was a good idea. But the other thing you saw is lots and lots of $30, $40, $50 variants of just everything. I mean, I've seen this, the silver foil, gray, red, pink, ultraviolet, sparkle, limited con, whatever cover of you name it, Spider-Gwen, multiverse, whatever the thing was, infinite numbers of times. And so that's, if you can move that kind of stuff, especially if the cost to you was $2, then that was a good way to make money. But you definitely saw that a lot of that. I'm going to say that variants and exclusives definitely the power behind the mid to low end of the comic market at the show. And we had a little bit of a post-con talk here over at Human Computing with the editorial staff. And I'm going to say, based on the strength of the last 2 shows I've seen, I'm inclined to tell them, the editorial guys, my feedback was that, I'm inclined to be a little less suspicious than I've been about highly inflated prices of right-off-the-shelf variants that, where you're going to print 250 copies of, the Grimm Z-Files Tale, blah, blah, and it's going to retail for X. The typical way that that a comic book like that, kind of like it's like a listed variant. It's not like a hidden one, but it's intentionally smallish run. It's like the naughty versus the nice cover, something like that. That sort of thing. The typical thing that's done in the past, in the years, has been, okay, you put it out at the price, but after 2 or 3 months, you're not at all surprised when they're being blown out in the $5 boxes. Man, I gotta say, at least the recent variant cover issues that I've seen that were initially sold at $30 to $50 retail, just a lot of foil covers, things like that, I saw them moving at $30, $50. So I didn't see that kind of instant erosion that I've seen in times past. So I think we're gonna keep a quick eye on that one, because I mean, in the end, the market is what sets the price for all this stuff. But in terms of like what the initial, if we have some unknown variant that came down from a show, like the sketch covers or the whatever else, something that is going to come onto our radar. Our job on our editorial board is to start the pricing discussion. It's like, well, what do I think a comic like this might start at, and then you put your best guess up, and then the market will instantly tell you whether you're right or wrong. I'm going to say my instant guesses on this stuff before the market starts doing its magic and giving you the real price. I'm inclined to move the price up a bit from where I've seen in the past. That was at least my impression. Curious to see what you guys thought. Let me see here. Going down here, or ask this: were there any comic books at the show? Yes, there were. Ode to Bucky's. Yes. It's just there was only the one copy of Ode to Bucky's I think I've ever seen. I may have one of about 20 copies that exist. I'm not sure, Fred. Anyway, let's see what else is going on. Let's see. Great place to say to buy omnibuses. I wrote to myself. But yes, grab them at the start, because the if you guys could see the wall behind me is just stuff I bought just at the show, which again is fabulous to carry around with you all day long. But the other thing is, if you go back on day 2 and you're looking for that that volume that was the $100 Captain America volume 1 omnibus that they had on sale for $55, it ain't there on day 2 necessarily. So if you see something you want, may as well grab it. And people did come to Comic-Con to spend money. I mean, that's the upside of having a show that's so chaotic, so hard to get a badge to, so expensive, is that when you do go to the show floor, you're not going to dick around. I mean, you're just going to get down to business. So that was definitely something pretty cool. All right, let me see here. Okay, so I told you about the cosplay stuff. Kind of, it's weird because I wrote my notes in one order and then I put my sequence of pictures in the other, so it's kind of messed me up. I told you about the Flynn's arcade thing. Another thing that was kind of interesting on the outside world is they took over a parking lot and they were doing a Twisted Metal attraction. I guess that's a new TV series that's coming out based on the video game. And so they had the weird guys with the guns and the clown guys and so forth, and they had that all done there. I guess the way, if you want to do that, is you have to essentially contract with the owner of the parking lot and say, yeah, I'm going to buy every parking spot for 2 days, and then you'll let me set up, and I'm going to do my thing. But they did it for 1 day, and then they were gone. It was by Saturday, which is typically the hottest day of the con. It was a regular con. It was a regular parking lot again. It was just, man, these things don't necessarily last. I mean, when you see something cool, take a picture of it. When you get the chance picture of it, if you got to stand in line to take a part of it, stand in line, take part of it right then and there, because things do disappear in the middle of the night. It's limited exclusive edition attractions, so that's kind of neat. Let's see here. What else is new? The library was a key location in the show, so that has never been something I've seen before. So if you guys have seen downtown San Diego, the library is actually in a really scary part of town. It's about 6 blocks away from the convention center, and I'll get on a little bit into the scariness of things. But it's a part where you want to walk with your city street eyes on as you get into that place. But the library was really a major partner this time out. They had presence both on the show floor, but they also were holding lots of the panels right at the library. So it gave normal civilians and people who weren't trying to score drugs an excuse to go to the library during the show for the first time. And I actually thought that was pretty cool. Out back, I didn't mention IMDb had the IMD boat. It was meant to be much cooler than it wound up being, because they were meant to have all sorts of Hollywood celebrities and stuff like that, because everyone could rock out their yacht hats and stuff like that. And so they had drinks, they had trivia, stuff like that. It wasn't a bad time, but certainly not the attraction it would have been if you'd actually managed to get the Hollywood guys in there to add the glam appeal. But thank you for trying, guys. That was cool. Parking, absolutely nuts. Parking at the show is done by lottery, and the downtown parking in San Diego is far, far harder than it's ever been before. Parking under the convention center or at the Marriott, forget about it. It used to be you could park right at the show, and it would be like $20 for the day. Like, oh yeah, great, no problem. Those passes, if they were ever available to the public, because a lot of times they're sold only to the vendors, they were gone months and months and months before the show opened. And then typically they had a big overflow parking thing that was out by the stadium, which is where most of the actual convention parking went. That stuff was all done by a lottery, and that was all closed off. So what you're left with is a lot of 2-hour parking in the city, which I talked to some civilians after the show. They're like, yeah, we parked at Comic-Con once, and we weren't back in time, and we were in a place that was 2-hour parking, and so we had a $500 tow ticket when we came back, and that kind of screwed up our Comic-Con memory some. Yeah, that's a hard thing to do. Or you do what I do, which is you park really far away and you walk. Which I figured, hey, if you can do it, not a bad way to go. Again, get your steps in, feels pretty good. But then I'm going to say the downside of that one is the areas you are walking through, if you decided to do that move, whew, man, rough. And I'll show a picture or two on that one. But that's definitely changed, not for the better in recent years. And the last thing I'll say about the whole thing is Comic-Con was expensive. $12 beers, $9 pretzels, $22 hamburgers. Can't believe how expensive just the show price was, and just pieces of pizza, $6. It's just for a rando slice of pepperoni, if you can get, and that's by far the cheapest thing you'll eat the entire show. Pretzel, $9. Anyway, that was a thing here. Oh, by the way, some notes here from our mod worth mentioning. Let's see. Yes, please like Hulk. Smash the like and subscribe buttons. Please do. We appreciate it very much. And also, we have a dedicated forum thread on the forums for topics for the shows. Please do that. Thank you for mod for reminding everyone. And also on the ComicBase message board forums is a link to Andre's world famous comic catalog. So it's basically if you took all the pictures in ComicBase and printed them, which is insane. It probably is deforested. I don't know. There are no trees left in the entire rainforest because of someone who tried to print that. that's a fact. It's a rock fact, if you guys know the reference. Anyway, that's a thing. Let's see here, and I have $5 bills. Yeah, just about. But yeah, that's the thing. Okay, and so look for that one. That link is in the forums, and we'll take care of that. Last thing I want to show you, I want to. Well, I'm gonna end on a happy note. But before I end on the happy note, I'm going to show you something that's a little less happy. First of all, this is the slide I meant to kick off with. So let's go ahead and get that one back up on here. Yes, this is an actual shirt. That's how I thought about the title. It's, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens at Comic-Con goes on the internet. Truer words have never, ever been spoken. Anyway, last thing I gotta say, again, I don't want to be too much of a bummer on this one, but San Diego, oy. This is a city that just, if I had all the money in the world, and you would need all the money in the world, could live in the entire country, San Diego 10 years ago would absolutely have been my choice. Perfect weather. It doesn't get nicer than that in America. Beautiful, sunny attitude about everything. You're in the heart of California. You still got the hustle and bustle going. It doesn't have the same energy as some of these, places like Silicon Valley in terms of like the tech sphere, but just great quality of life. Really, really idyllic in terms of that. Man, oh man, oh man, I cannot believe how bad it got in the 5 years since I was there last. It used to be that there was, you see bums on the street. They were running some missions, 3-4 blocks east of the show thing, and they would, they'd be bumming up some blocks, a couple blocks long, times maybe 1 or 2 blocks, going, east of the show. And then you'd see the odd rando just, hanging out downtown. Unfortunately, nowadays, it's so much worse. You saw homeless encampments, you saw tent cities just on the overpasses as you're driving into town on the main streets. I say geographically, once you got 3 blocks or 2 blocks east of the convention center, times almost a solid mile. It was like 8 or 9 blocks times 6 blocks wide. Bums, tent cities, guys completely whacked out, absolutely crazy people, feces everywhere. Think some of it was dogs. I know the stuff that was in water bottles was not from a dog. Crazy stuff. And it was weird because I'm renting a Turo, which basically, Turo is a service where you, someone goes and essentially Airbnbs their car to you. And I got a deal on like a 2023 Ford Mustang. I thought this will be great. I was just in Vegas. It was terrific. And it was, cheaper than, again, renting a Nissan Sentra at the airport. But it's like, I cannot, in all conscience, park this nice lady's car next to some dude who's wasted out, who's lighting his crack pipe. And so there was a day when I spent an extra half an hour just circling around looking for someplace safe. I didn't care how far I was walking in order to park this thing. So yeah, it just got a lot rougher, guys. And whatever you're doing in San Diego, it ain't working. So I wish you all well, but boy, that's just, it's not a turn for the best. Anyway, I think that's all I got to say on the downside of that one. It was really interesting. I do say Comic-Con was good for me to get away. It kind of re-energized, my connection with just making new stuff, and I came back with a lot of cool ideas for both the program and just, other creative things in life. So, I really love reconnecting with the geek culture and the whole thing. I mean, you definitely walk around Comic-Con and thinking, these are my people. It's like, it's, that part was really neat. And by the way, and hi to everyone who stopped and said hi on the show floor and things like that. It was great seeing everyone. Thank you everyone, my old friends I got to have beers or or drinks with or whatever else, So that was all great, and that's really why I do these things. But we're absolutely a gathering of the tribes of geekdom. Nothing else like it in the world. But man, I hope some of the bad stuff is less bad in the future, because that was bracing, and it made me rethink my unquestioned love for all things San Diego. When there's rustling in the bushes everywhere you look, and it's like some dude's living in there. It's like it's not great, kids. But I hope that gets better. All right. Anyway, so to not end things on a completely down note on things. I want to share with you. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see movies over the weekend, but I want to switch to if you didn't see Barbie or you didn't see Oppenheimer, I got 2 for you here today, and I'm going to play this for you here, and then we'll get out. And thank you everyone for coming, and we'll take this one away. Let's see if I can cue this up. Nope, that is not it. Oh no. Hold on, guys. I forget that I have a macro that switches stuff, and now I need to pull up a different control panel to switch my stuff in, because I could have left the controller on one thing, but no, by the time I'm done there, no, I'm in something completely different. So let me go back here. Okay, that's the switcher there. Whoops. Let's go pull up. Okay, here we go. All right, we got it. Professionalism at its finest, folks. All right, here you go, and enjoy this one, and then we'll say goodbye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have the bomb.
She's a scientist, and I hear she's the best.
Good.
She's also a doctor.
Excellent.
She's also a flight attendant, astronaut, Marine Corps medic, paleontologist, veterinarian, and 3-time Olympic gold medalist.
I see the bright pink glow of a new era. We imagine a future. And our imaginings look fabulous.
Barbie, together we're gonna beat those Nazis. And we're gonna look so good doing it.
Hey Barbie, can I come to your secret laboratory later?
Sure. I don't have any plans. Just giving humanity the means to destroy itself.
Barbie, this candy we've been making is delicious, and it gives my skin such a healthy glow.
Ken? That's weaponized uranium-235. You're probably gonna die in, like, 12 minutes.
So you're telling me when I push this button, there's a chance we might destroy the entire world?
Yeah, but only like 60%. Hit it, Ken. Starring me as Barbie. Ryan Gosling as Ken. Matt Damon as Lieutenant General Leslie Groves. Will Ferrell as the President. And Gil? How do you say that? And now I am become Death, destroyer of worlds.
Oh, that's so awesome.